You see, uh, to start with it, Arvind Kejriwal is known for making irresponsible statements. So I don't think this is an ethanol blending. This is what we call sustainable aviation fuel, for which the industry, aviation industry, all elements of it have been working for since last two and a half decades, because the emissions of ATF are harming the environment. So the aviation industry has decided that by 2050 there should be zero emission in terms of harmful gases. So sustainable aviation fuel is an exercise to find a replaceable fuel which provides the same efficiency but does not harm the environment. Now, the composition of it is still being discussed and worked out by various manufacturing agencies. The ICAO has created a working group, and there are corset guidelines where they have tried to see that by 2030, 5% of the fuel used in aircraft should be a kind of sustainable aviation fuel. And I think India has also been is one of the member countries to ICAO, which have also been working towards finding solutions. Now there are two issues. One, the composition of aviation turbine fuel, of composition of sustainable aviation fuel, and also the regulatory approval. Because even if you know the composition, you cannot just go and put it in the aircraft. The oil marketing companies or the producers of sustainable aviation fuel have to firstly get it approved by the regulatory authorities, which include EASA, which include FAA, which also include the ICAO. So I think right now we are still in the process of getting those approvals and working on it. So until that happens, there can be no direct mixing of the sustainable fuel. There is a wish list, there is a goal, but I don't think it is going to happen tomorrow.
And so one more thing I just want to ask, that SAF and ethanol both are completely different. Both are different products, different specification. So yeah, your take on this, that how much different it is, because normal passengers are not aware about it. If somebody is very authoritative person who was a former chief minister, so they may trust on it. So please.
No, you see, basically ethanol is a pure alcohol.
Yeah.
It has to be chemically treated, and then with various uh, chemical reactions, it is then converted into a highly refined sustainable fuel. So, man, it's not just ethanol, there can be other components also, but it is not a direct ethanol blending in any way. So, that is something which needs to be understood.
And so, day before yesterday, the incident which happened, the flight Air India, such a turbulence, that was really horrible videos which we saw on the screen. So, I just wanted to check with you that in this case, how DGCA will investigate this entire thing, and what about the crew member?
You see, look, you have to understand that weather is a very unpredictable phenomena, and sometimes it develops suddenly. There are also times when an aircraft is moving through a route. By the time it has taken off and it has to land, in between the weather changes drastically. Our aircrafts are very well equipped, very with very capable weather radars now. You know exactly where the build-up is, what is the nature of build-up. Uh, so pilot tries to avoid it. But sometimes what happens that there are in between air pockets. So if the aircraft gets into air pocket, then you find sudden it becomes like a vacuum, and it becomes like a free fall, which is what you have noticed here. But once you come out of it, it is the pilot's competence that he steadies the aircraft, Now the basic issue is that it is one of the rare phenomena, but when you are always encountering weather, and sometimes the build-up is so fast, you don't have the time to divert. When you are in between the flying and suddenly the build-up happens. So usually, or also there are also times when the pilot feels that it is not as strong a build-up as we should be able to push through this turbulence, and suddenly it becomes more intensive. It's like sometimes you see winds are okay, they're strong winds, but they are not cyclonic winds, and suddenly you find that in a matter of seconds those strong winds become very cyclonic in nature. Now, so this is where the challenge of airlines is. The important thing here is there are two aspects here. One is the pilot's competence and concentration of mind. Sometimes the pilot becomes disoriented, and that becomes very fatal at times. That becomes very serious problem, because as you know, once you are moving, once you are being pulled down by gravity, the time between you flying a height to the impact point is very less. It could be few seconds. So the capability is how the pilot can sorry how the pilot can respond to the crisis. There is also second scenario where when you have sudden impact of this nature, sometimes the critical equipment on board, the avionics or the electrical supply item, sometimes they can also get affected. That becomes a serious issue. Otherwise, normal situation, some weather you are always encountering. This became an extreme situation, and you to understand we are in the full monsoon season, and at the moment the weather all around is high. So, and then it was coming from Bangkok to Delhi. Now the en route weather goes through all the sea area where there is a monsoon build up. So it is not something which is unexpected, but what has been unexpected is that the air pocket was so strong, and it was such a high, it was such a drop that it affected the passengers. So the basic point is that it can, that is why usually people are advised to tie the seat belts, because if you are not tying the seat belt, then it can be very dangerous. And of course, there are impact, you can hit your head, or the overhead bins throw up the overhead baggage, it can cause the damages. But luckily, while there have been injuries to passengers, but it has been contained. It could have been more serious. So you have to give credit to the pilot. The pilot was very competent who could handle it. But these situations at times are unavoidable.
सर एक आखिरी सवाल, आज दिल्ली के पूर्व मुख्यमंत्री अरविंद केजरीवाल ने एक ट्वीट किया है कि जो एविएशन टरबाइन फ्यूल जो है उसमें भी इथेनॉल जैसी मिलावट करने सरकार जा रहा है, लेकिन उसके ऊपर राममोहन नायडू ने ट्वीट करते हुए कहा है कि एसएएफ एंड इथेनॉल कम्प्लीटली डिफरेंट है। तो हमें ज़रा ये बताइए विस्तार से कि इथेनॉल और एसएएफ किस तरीके से डिफरेंट है।
देखिए, ऐसा है कि सबसे पहली बात तो है कि अरविंद केजरीवाल गैर जिम्मेदाराना जब स्टेटमेंट देने के लिए जाने जाते हैं, तो आई विल नॉट टेक हिज वर्ड्स एज गॉस्पल। मतलब उन्होंने जो कहा है बहुत ही गैर जिम्मेदारा बयान है। इथेनॉल और सस्टेनेबल एविएशन फ्यूल दो अलग अलग प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, जो उसमें उनकी केमिकल रिएक्शंस हैं, ब्लेंडिंग है, वो सारी चीज़ें अलग तरीके से होती हैं। जैसे एटीएफ और नॉर्मल पेट्रोल में फ़र्क होता है, नॉर्मल कैरोसिन फ़र्क, उसी तरह से सस्टेनेबल एविएशन फ्यूल अलग होता है। अभी सस्टेनेबल एविएशन फ्यूल के बारे में चर्चा चल रही है, और उसके लिए बहुत बड़ा एक रेगुलेटरी सिस्टम है। विश्व में जितनी एयरलाइंस हैं, तो ये माना जाता है कि जो एयरक्राफ्ट्स हैं उनसे जो एमिशन होता है, जो धुआं निकलता है, उससे एनवायरनमेंट को बहुत डैमेज हो रहा है। तो सारे एयरलाइंस इंडस्ट्री और जो डिफरेंट कंट्रीज़ हैं उन्होंने तय करा है कि 2050 तक हम इसको जीरो एमिशन लेवल पे ले आएंगे ताकि एनवायरनमेंट को हम बचा सकें। अब उसके लिए थोड़े से एफर्ट पिछले 20-25 साल से चल रहे हैं। तो अभी जो है स्थिति ये है कि एक इकाओ की एक बॉडी है कोरसेट, उन्होंने तय करा है कि एक विशफुल थिंकिंग है कि साहब 2030 तक अब हम 5% फ्यूल जो है उसको हम सस्टेनेबल एविएशन फ्यूल के लेवल पर लाएं ताकि वो फिर धीरे धीरे उसको हम एक्सपीरियंस के बेस पे बढ़ाते चलेंगे। पर ये इतना इजी क्वेश्चन नहीं है। एक तो जो आपके ऑयल मार्केटिंग कंपनी है, जो प्रोड्यूसिंग कंपनीज हैं, उनको सबसे पहले तो उसके कंपोजिशन को एक इंडस्ट्री बॉडी को एक्सेप्ट करना पड़ेगा जो रिसर्च बेस्ड है। उसके बाद जो आपके कंट्री की जो प्रोडक्शन फैसिलिटीज़ हैं उनमें उस लेवल की एफिशिएंसी लानी पड़ेगी। और किसी स्टेज पे थोड़ा बहुत जो आपके इंजन्स और आपके जो कंपोनेंट्स हैं उनके जो है पैरामीटर्स हैं उनको आपको मॉडिफाई करना पड़ेगा। तो अभी उसमें समय है और मेरे ख्याल से अभी तक हिंदुस्तान की किसी एजेंसी का कोई फ्यूल अप्रूव नहीं है। जब तक वो नहीं अप्रूव होगा तब तक हम उसे ब्लेंड नहीं कर पाएंगे।